It's time for the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast.
On this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, the Super Bowl is set. We will be taking a deep look into the NFC and AFC championship games. We also have a look at the first half of the NHL season and so much more. Stay tuned for another exciting episode.
I'm glad you connected. This is Dave Johnson, voice of the Washington Wizards. You have connected to the right place because you are listening to my man, Josh Kirby, on Sports Podcast.
Alrighty, back with you on another edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports Podcast, sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores, along with PM Plus Reserves. As always, want to give a big thanks to MPT Now Productions, JR Beats Official, and Dave Johnson. And as always, we are part of the Mayo Please Podcast Network. Exciting episode to get into, but before we do, want to welcome in calling on the phone once again, Dan Dembski. Dan, my man, coming in clutch, and we're just We're gonna have a great day talking sports.
Yeah, man, we are. It's there's a lot to talk about with the big weekend in the NFL, the last weekend before the Super Bowl. It's flown by, man.
Well, let's get right into it. I mean, I don't see any point of giving the fans more suspense than there already is. So we have the AFC Championship and the NFC Championship to get on to. The first one I would like to start with is the AFC Championship game between the Kansas City Chiefs and the Tennessee Titans. The Kansas City Chiefs punched their ticket to the Super Bowl 35-24. Like last time when the Chiefs played the Texans, it sort of seemed like Tennessee was going on a big run, but it wasn't that big compared to the Houston game. And then Kansas City just kicked it into gear, and they ended up winning the game.
Well, I think they were only up by, at the most 7, maybe 10.
Not a high margin, but still.
Yeah, and you can't and after what they did in the divisional round, there's no way you could count out this Kansas City offense, and they just went to work and, quite frankly, just put the wood, especially in the fourth quarter. They really did what they had to do to win, and Patrick Mahomes was spectacular as usual on both ends, passing and throwing, and the Chiefs are just too good offensively. I think a lot of people kind of saw this coming. The Titans were going to have to score in the mid-30s to have a chance, and they played decently well. They were down 10-0 and 17-7, just so we have that marked down. It's just a case of one team just being way too good for another team, and that's what the case was in this game. And they really did a great job of slowing down Derrick Henry. He had a couple big runs early in the game, especially in the first half. I thought, wow, he's really been able to get going, been able to run pretty well, busted off a couple decent medium-sized runs and a couple long ones. And I thought, well, if they could keep him going, he can lead the Titans to a huge upset, and I think that would be the biggest upset of the playoffs. Maybe the Ravens game would be a little bit more of an upset. But I thought Tennessee really played well for a half, but they just didn't come to play in the second half, and that's one thing that the Chiefs do really well. They were so great at making adjustments coming out of halftime and really just putting the ball in Patrick Mahomes' hands, saying, "Hey, kid, go out there and make a play for us." And he did not disappoint.
Yeah, in my opinion, I feel like stopping the Titans' run game and Derrick Henry was huge for the Chiefs because Derrick Henry was hot pretty much the entire playoffs. Just
Yep.
so you know,
Yep.
and it
Yep.
it was the Chiefs just knew how it found the right game plan to stop the run game. That was a pivotal turning point in the game. But we cannot disregard the season that Tennessee has had. If you
No,
look
they're
back
fantastic.
to like early October, like in the middle of the regular season, who would have thought the Titans would have made it to the AFC Championship game? Who would have thought?
Well, they weren't even in the hunt there for a while. They crept up towards the end of the season, and then I think it was the last 2 weeks they kind of got a little bit of a bump. Pittsburgh losing, and I forget the other team that had to lose for them to get in. They were able to squeak in at the 6th seed, and then how many people counted them out in every playoff game, Josh? I mean, look at that huge upset on the road against New England. Of course, unfortunately, my Ravens going there to M&T Bank Stadium and upsetting them, and that just shows you how well coached they were, how great a coach Mike Vrabel has been this season, and how good he can be for years to come. I mean, they were 9-7 fringe playoff team. They really didn't play poorly in this game, Josh. They played well enough to win. Their defense couldn't do enough to slow down Patrick Mahomes. And I really, like you said, I think you have to credit Kansas City's defense. I mean, you have a guy coming in, Derrick Henry, who is averaging 150 or more yards in like the last month, especially in the playoffs where I think he had 180 or so against New England. Then he had almost 190 or something like that against the Ravens.
Yeah, I
And
believe that's correct.
This is a guy coming in that was just destroying defenses, and they didn't have a way, for them to slow him down. But give credit to Kansas City's defense. They did a great job at the point of attack. This is something I talked about with the Ravens and Titans game. What the Ravens didn't do well, the Chiefs did well. I mean, they loaded the box on them. They really packed it in between the tackles, and that's really where Derrick Henry gets the majority of his chunk yardage is in between the tackles. He's not much of an outside tackle type runner. So, they got them out of their comfort zone, and this is just what great coaches and great teams are able to do. They're able to adapt, and Kansas City was prepared. And like I said, really, especially in the second half, they were super impressive being able to slow down Derrick Henry because, like I said, for that first half, it was 21-17 at halftime, and you're thinking Tennessee's in this game. Well, deep down, I thought maybe the Kansas City was going to go on a little bit of a run. Of course, they scored 14 in the fourth, but they were just clearly the better team offensively and defensively. They just have such a great pass rush too, Josh. They got a lot of pressure on Tannehill, forced him to really get outside the pocket, which is something he's not really known for, forcing him to throw sort of before he was ready and before his receivers were really ready. And he's not a guy who's going to be a mobile quarterback. There was one play in particular where they got him to it seemed like he ran about 10 yards or so outside the pocket. That's how you beat a team like Tennessee. That's the blueprint you use. Stop the run and then force the quarterback, to make bad decisions, and they got a lot of good pressure. Especially Terrell Suggs seems very and both edges of that defensive line could cause some serious problems in the Super Bowl.
Yeah, absolutely. And another point I want to look at is a pivotal turning point of that game in the Patrick Mahomes very athletic run play to get them in around 35 yards for a touchdown. That was a very pivotal point in the game, in my opinion, that pretty much, in my opinion, sealed the deal for the Kansas City Chiefs. But all around, this game was a really hard-fought game. Give credit where credit's due. Tennessee has had one great season. You you cannot doubt you cannot doubt Tennessee has had an amazing season. Mike Vrabel is such a great head coach, and I think Tennessee has a lot of bright future ahead of them.
Well, especially in that division, you're looking at really their only competition being Houston, and who knows what they're going to do with their head coach coming up in the offseason, whether they'll keep him or not. The Colts are a mess right now. We thought they were figured out, and the Jaguars. I'm not even gonna bring them up. So who knows with Nick Foles healthy? But that's going to be that's kind of a questionable thing. But I totally agree, Josh. I think that was very well put. The Titans really had a great season, but they just didn't have enough layers to their attack. You have to have more than one playmaker to win a playoff game. You have to have guys step up, and sometimes you have multiple players come out of nowhere in a playoff situation. You didn't really see that from Tennessee. They had some guys who played well. Corey Davis was a great target. AJ Brown. Those guys are going to be back. They're going to be great receivers for Ryan Tannehill. Like I said, if they can add some more weapons around him, this team could be dangerous. But if you can stop the run, you can stop this Tennessee team, and that's exactly what Kansas City did.
Absolutely. But great coaching. In my opinion, these playoffs for the this year, it's come down to great coaching adjustment in the second half. And it's great to see the style of coaching and the success they have had making the changes they need to do and end up winning these games.
Yeah, there's, of course, you got the guy with a lot of playoff experience in Andy Reid. He's trying to get the monkey off his back to get back to a Super Bowl for just the second time in his long career as a head coach. And I think a lot of people felt this was the year they could finally do it. And this was the situation they finally did it. And give a lot of credit to what Andy Reid's been able to accomplish there in Kansas City and turn that franchise around. It helps when you have Patrick Mahomes, but I think this is going to be a really fun Super Bowl matchup. Well, I know we'll talk about that probably later on. We have a whole another episode, I think, to discuss all that stuff.
Yes, we do. Yes, we do. All the details will be coming at the end of the show. So,
are we going to go to Miami, Josh?
Probably not. I don't think we have a section on Radio Row for the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, unfortunately.
Well, I'm in school anyway, so it may be kind of hard to get down there. But
man. All right. All right. Well, moving on here from the AFC Championship to a not so pretty NFC Championship game. The story was the same. Green Bay came to the West Coast and got destroyed in all aspects of the game. This game, in my opinion, I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. I'll tell you why. Raheem Mostert, in a playoff game, 29 carries for 220 yards, breaking Colin Kaepernick. And I believe that was a playoff record as well, if I'm not mistaken. Jimmy Garoppolo. The 49ers stuck with the run because it worked. And the Packers' defense was not so good. The 49ers stuck with the run, and Jimmy Garoppolo only had 6 for 8. 77 yards, not a single passing touchdown, nor an interception. This game was dominated by the San Francisco 49ers deep in the trenches. There is no doubt about it that San Francisco won this game in the trenches. This was the most run-heavy playoff game I have ever seen in my entire life. And for Green Bay, what happened? You get shut out in the first half, 27-0. Like, that's not the Green Bay Packers I'm used to seeing. That's not the playoffs Aaron Rodgers I'm used to seeing. Something clearly wasn't right in going on for the Packers. I mean, credit to Matt LaFleur, first year head coach, bringing the team to 13-3 to an NFC championship game. But like, I feel like nobody showed up. Absolutely nobody showed up. Aaron Rodgers did not look like the classic Aaron Rodgers we have seen in previous playoff games and regular season comeback games. The Green Bay defense had absolutely zero answers for Raheem Mostert. And rightfully so. San Francisco dominated at all aspects of the game and ended up punching their ticket to the Super Bowl 37-20. That was sort of a rant I wanted to go on, but this was definitely not a Packers team I have ever seen before in my life. Let's get your thoughts on this, Dan.
Well, I think they met their match. Not enough people are giving the 49ers defense credit for slowing down this Packers attack, especially not only Aaron Rodgers, but how about the way Aaron Jones has played for the last, 5-6 weeks? He'd been having a lot of huge games and helping Aaron Rodgers out, take some of the pressure off. They didn't really shut down Devontae Adams. He had a great game, but no touchdowns. This Packers team, I mean, they live and die by Aaron Rodgers. Their whole team relies on how he plays. And when they were down 7-0 at the end of the first. A lot of people think, okay, the second quarter the Packers will get their offense going. They just couldn't get anything going. They had some turnovers. They were punting, giving the 49ers good field position. Just everything that could go wrong in the first half for the Packers went wrong. You got to credit San Francisco for them coming out. Their defense playing really well. And how about, like you said, Raheem Mostert? I mean, he was unbelievable. 4 touchdowns for him in the game. And he was the biggest difference maker in this game of any player. There's no doubt about it. But the Packers defense was a concern coming into this game, and rightfully so. I mean, they've had some decent games this year, but they've given up a lot of points. Even in that win, in the divisional round to Seattle. I mean, they gave up some really big plays. They gave up a decent amount of points. They were definitely vulnerable on defense, and I think they were vulnerable against the run. San Francisco studied the tape. They knew that. Kyle Shanahan came out with that game plan on defense to stop the run, on offense, to run. See, I'm getting confused now. He knew the Packers were not the best run defense in the NFL, and they'd given up some really big games to a lot of running backs. So, that was his plan coming out. They executed it to perfection. And Raheem Mostert kind of put his name into playoff history, and maybe it's in the minds of people all across the earth who watched that game. I mean, I don't think many people really knew who he was. At least not the amount of people to know who he is now. If he can build on this, he can be a great running back for the future. But I mean, he was fantastic. And like you said, I mean, the Packers had no adjustments. They played better in the second half. But when you're down 27-0, it's over. It's already over. I don't care how good your football team is, and you're down 27-0 at half. It's not looking good for you. There's only been a couple times in history that a lead like that has ever been erased or caught, and of course some of the big playoff games. Of course, the Oilers come to mind, but that was a completely different situation. But
don't forget about the Patriots.
Yeah, the 25-point comeback. That's the Patriots now. Come on, this is they're a different breed when they get into those big games. Usually, not this season, but just unbelievable across the board. San Francisco had hurt all week. Well, that's not the same team. That they beat 37-8. Da 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 da. They're not gonna dominate them like that. And they said, okay, we're gonna prepare and we're gonna go out there and we're gonna defend our home turf. And they did just that. And Jimmy Garoppolo didn't have to do a whole lot. He 6 of 8. It's a little concerning going into the Super Bowl because I don't think you're going to be able to run the ball as effectively against this Kansas City defense. I know I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit. So he's going to have to throw it more. But you're right. We talked about this in our production meeting. I mean, that stat line is wow. 6 of 8, 77 yards in a playoff game. But like I told you, when you run it 29 times with one guy and he gets 220 yards, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. It shows that no one can stop him. And he broke off a bunch of big runs, including that 36-yarder, which was unbelievable to watch. But the 49ers just beat him at the point of attack. Like I said with the last game, I mean, it's all about getting a push off the line of scrimmage. They did that, and they just dominated the Packers. The Packers front seven or front line defense. And they just said, we're going to run it down your throat, try to stop it. And they just couldn't. And like I said, when you're down 27-0, it's deflating, and especially going into the locker room and knowing how many adjustments they had to make. And they just didn't have enough gas in the tank coming out to put together a comeback. And congratulations to Kyle Shanahan and the 49ers. They're an impressive team. They deserve to be in the Super Bowl. I think I picked the Packers to win this game, and I thought they'd play better. So I look like a fool, but the 49ers are clearly the best team in the NFC, and they definitely showed that in all facets of the game, and really just stymieing Aaron Rodgers, putting a lot of pressure on him, forcing him to make bad throws. Usually Rodgers is good at those sort of off balance, on the run, sort of look at the wrist sort of throws, Josh, but it just wasn't there for him. And credit the 49ers secondary, who, like Richard Sherman, guys like him played very well and, backed up the smack talk that they had heard all week.
Yeah, and what a story with Richard Sherman from winning a playoff game in Seattle to tearing his ACL and ending up going back to the Super Bowl with the 49ers. It was
unbelievable.
Yeah, he was on the field crying after the game because of the long road he had. But Richard Sherman, he's back in the Super Bowl, and that was a really good story I saw. And another thing I'll add, the last point here, going into halftime, I was like, Green Bay has got to make the necessary coaching adjustments. They were close, but it wasn't good enough to beat San Francisco. San Francisco clearly proved they're the best team in the NFC. They clearly proved that after last year in their horrible season, they didn't even make the playoffs, to making it to the Super Bowl this year. Credit to the front office staff, John Lynch, Kyle Shanahan. They turned things around, and this may as well be the next NFC dynasty, maybe. I'm not saying they will. I'm just saying there's a chance this could be the next best NFC dynasty.
Yeah, and I'm going to go back to your point you made about the adjustments. I mean, I think this is kind of where, the 49ers didn't have to adjust much, Josh. You have 27-0. You don't have to change much. The Packers did. And this is where I think a young head coach is a burden. I mean, how do you adjust when you're a young head coach and you're down 27-0 in a playoff game, and you have to inspire and fire up your guys and change things, in 15 minutes. I think it's how long halftime is. 20 minutes, whatever it is. In that short amount of time, it's tough for a young coach to be put in that situation. Maybe if Matt LaFleur had more experience coaching in the NFL, the Packers make more of a comeback? I don't know. I mean, that's a good point about the adjustments. But it's just hard to fire up your football team when you're down 27-0 at halftime. And, give a lot of credit to the 49ers for defending their home turf, but feeding off that home crowd. That was some clean home cooking. I mean, they were fired up. Every single thing that happened in the 49ers' favor, those fans were up on their feet and letting them know about it. So that's really what it's all about. It's what the home field advantage is for. And Richard Sherman, how about that anniversary of him at the end of that Seattle-San Francisco playoff game in 2014? Where he and Michael Crabtree got into it. It's kind of funny how history sort of, who would have thought then he would have ended up being a 49er? It's bizarre how it happens. Sports are strange sometimes, and again, credit the 49ers, credit what Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch, the general manager, have been able to do there. I really like John Lynch and what he's been able to do with the 49ers. I thought it was an odd hire when they brought him in. He was broadcasting at the time, but they must have seen something in him, and obviously it's worked out because they were down in the dumps when he got there. He made a couple moves and turned him up, and then they've gotten to this point. So 49ers deserve to be there. The questions about if Aaron Rodgers can continue to play at a high level, I think are kind of silly. He had a couple bad throws, couple interceptions, but he was 31 of 39 for 326. You can't ask much more of a guy who's been in the league for 15 years. He's only been a starter for 11. I think he took over in 2009 or 2008. So 11 or 12 years there. But I think Aaron Rodgers can still play. He needs more help around him. And Devontae Adams, he has Devontae Adams, but they gotta get some more help around him, and I think they'll do that, and they'll be back. They're going to be fine. But the 49ers are definitely, I could see them being the next great NFL team. But you could argue the same on the other side. So for the Chiefs, so I just thought both these games were. I just thought the better team won, and the better team really dominated when they had to.
Yes, indeed. It was just crazy. I'm shocked, but the Super Bowl is set. We won't go into details. Stay tuned to the end of the show for our mini preview of our Super Bowl show. But Kansas City and San Francisco, it's set to be a really great matchup, in my opinion. And that's all I'm going to say about it. And that wraps up the AFC and NFC championship talks. I'm crying deep down inside because there are only 2 more weeks into the end of football for all you fans that consider the Pro Bowl a week in the NFL. We are shifting our focus now from football to baseball. The Hall of Fame has been set with all the other Yankee players who have been inducted, the most recent being last year, Mariano Rivera for the New York Yankees. And this year, Derek Jeter gets the nod for Cooperstown. And he joins all the legendary Yankees, Babe Ruth, you got all of them, like Lou DiMaggio, Joe DiMaggio. You have everybody. And it's just great to see a great player like Derek Jeter get back into the Hall of Fame. Get into the Hall of Fame. There's no getting back into the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, there's no way around it. But yeah, he was fantastic. He was almost unanimously voted in, like his old pal Mariano Rivera last year, who was the only player in Major League Baseball history to get 100% of the vote. One writer did not vote him in the Hall of Fame. It's ridiculous.
If
Absolutely
I'm
ridiculous.
correct, he tweeted saying he did not vote for Jeter.
Yeah, I'm trying to find it, but I can't find it right now. But
hunt him down, Dan.
I will do my best. I'm going to do angry tweets at him all night tonight.
Oh, that would be hilarious.
But he was one of the best players of his generation by far. I think the best player of his generation. Think about his successes. Like I mentioned in our production meeting, how he was able to play defense like no other shortstop could. He was so great at those backhand ground balls. The jump throw, which he made famous, he could do that better than anybody else, and he could make plays that would have been hits against other shortstops, but he was able to do it. And how about the one defensive play that a lot of people remember, that either 2003 or 2004 ALCS against the Red Sox, when he runs into the stands, dives for a foul ball, makes the catch about 2 rows up or something, gets up, and his face is all busted up. I mean, that is the ultimate Hall of Fame play for me.
Classic.
But just his numbers, I mean, there's no way you can't have this guy in the Hall of Fame. He's 6th all time in hits, had 3,465 hits, and of course he didn't play. He was hurt in 2013. He only had played 17 games in 2013. So think if he had played a full season and he was healthy, how about that? I mean, he would have. There was only 3 times in 19 seasons that he didn't play 145 games. So he's 10th all time in plate appearances, which is really unbelievable to me. He got there a lot, but he was great when it counted too. He was unbelievable both in the regular season, his numbers, and in the postseason. He had a 308 batting average. This is in October. Excuse me. He had a 374 on base percentage, and he had a 465 slugging percentage in 158 postseason games. And then of course his regular season, his career numbers, his regular season numbers were fantastic. He batted 310, on base percentage of 377, and he slugged 440. And those are just video game numbers, his defense and his hitting and just his attitude towards the game, his respect towards the game of baseball. He didn't cheat. He didn't use steroids.
He didn't steal signs.
Exactly, he didn't steal signs. He was just as humble and as classy a person as you could get in an athlete, and that to me is what ultimately makes it such an important award. And I think if he's not the number 1 shortstop of all time, he's top 2 for me. Because being an Orioles fan, it's tough for me to put him above Ripken. But I didn't really get to see Ripken play. I saw Jeter play, throughout his career, and there's no doubt that he deserved to be a unanimous Hall of Famer. See, now I can't say unanimous. And that is, it's so well deserved, and I think it's a travesty that he didn't get 100% of the vote. And he's going to go down. He's going to go down as one of the best shortstops of all time, and maybe one of the best players of all time. If once we look back 10, 15, 20 to 50 years from now, we're going to talk about him and his style of play and just the way he played the game of baseball, which was the right way.
Derek Jeter joins Joe DiMaggio, Lou Gehrig, Babe Ruth, Mickey Mantle, and Yogi Berra with the legendary Yankees in the Hall of Fame. It's great to see it. Another Hall of Famer as well, Larry Walker, a former Colorado Rocky, makes his enshrinement into the Hall of Fame also. It's incredible to see, and I can't wait to watch that induction ceremony. I'm sure Jeter is over the top happy, and I believe it will be a very great time for him and his family.
Yeah, I'm excited to see his speech and hear what he has to say, and I'm sure he'll have a lot of people to thank who got him here. it's unbelievable that he started in 1995 or 1994. I guess
A
he
long career.
made his
Man.
debut, but he didn't really play in much until 95, and then he was just exceptional for those 19 seasons he was with the Yankees, and well deserved. And I can't think of a better player to be in the Hall of Fame.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So that wraps up our Hall of Fame talk. We're going to take a quick break. And afterwards, we will have a preview of our Super Bowl show coming up soon. So stay tuned for that. We have another brief segment after this, and we'll get back to you on the other side. The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast continues right after this. All right, welcome back. Now shifting our focus once again to NHL hockey. We have neglected to talk about the NHL at all. We've been very football heavy. I'm sure you have enjoyed that though, but what a great time to start talking about the NHL then coming up on the All-Star break. The first half of the season is finished, and here to talk hockey with me today from the Power Play Point podcast and Sports on the Hill podcast. She's been on here before, Anna Knox.
Yes.
Anna, first and foremost, you must be over the moon that your 49ers are going to the Super Bowl.
Oh, you said that that you guys have been talking about the NFL, and I can talk for about another little bit about how excited I am. I think this is the exact matchup I wanted in the Super Bowl. You have two young, skilled, fantastic quarterbacks with great personalities, no ego, nothing like that, and great coaches. I mean, like, you have an Andy Reid and you have a young Shanahan. So I like the balance of the two, and I am so excited for this. I'm just going to say, our San Francisco win in 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's going to be a really exciting matchup, but that is not why we're here, Anna. So
No.
I will not force you to talk football the whole time. But it's
That's okay.
it's the All-Star break, so I basically want to run down the divisions, and we'll talk some caps, we'll talk some other stuff, and let's get this started. Starting off, Eastern Conference Atlantic Division. I mean, I've seen a lot of this. Boston and Tampa Bay, two pretty
Yeah.
good teams. I mean, they're 1-2 in the division with 70 points, 62 points. You have Florida with 61 points, Toronto with 57 points, rounding out the bottom four: Buffalo, Montreal, Ottawa, and Detroit.
Yeah.
I was actually fortunate to go to the Capitals versus Lightning game, and well, what a close game that was.
It was insane. It was absolutely insane. And I think after let's just say the last 2 seasons, the Lightning's really taken a hit. They blew everybody out of the water. It was like, and then they choked, which worked in our favor in 18. And I don't know if it's just, they're not quite. Last year they seemed just a little bit off. And I think right now is that season that they just want to come back and just take it all. But you can't when you have someone, when you have a team like the Boston Bruins on top. They are on fire. As much as I can't stand about 90% of the roster of the Boston Bruins, you can't not acknowledge David Pastrnak. I mean, he's got 37 goals. He's out of control this year. I mean, seriously out of control. Even a captain in the All-Stars. And he's just damn good. He's just on fire. So you have a lot of talent coming in, but anytime, when you look at the divisions and you see Boston and you see the Capitals at the top, there's just going to be a lot of rivalry, and I love it. It's like the best part of it.
Absolutely. I feel like over the past couple of years, Washington and Boston have developed sort of a rivalry in the Eastern Conference, which I mean, I don't really have a problem with Boston as much as I do with Pittsburgh. But Tampa Bay, going back to Tampa Bay, they
Mhm.
really don't seem like the same Tampa Bay Lightning we saw on the Capitals Stanley Cup run. Yeah,
Right.
they were looking so good. We brought the Caps to 7 games, and then they get swept.
Yeah.
They get swept a year after, and it's like, yeah, was it swept? I forget if it was swept or they won 1 game, but they lost in the first round of the playoffs, which was absolutely shocking to me. So,
Yeah, no, it was a sweep. I'm pretty sure because I think all of our jaws dropped because I want to say like one of the first times I came on your show, we were talking about who uh who we thought were going to be the contenders, and I'm pretty sure, meet my words on this one, was like, oh, hands down, Tampa Bay has got this in their series, and on, and they got swept, and I think everybody was like, what the hell just happened? But when a team goes through that, it's there's a lot of assumptions that because they had such a great season that they're just automatically gonna, win all their playoff matches that they're gonna get into and win the Stanley Cup, and that's not what happens. By the time you've reached your 82nd game, you're gonna have injuries, you're gonna have fatigue, and you're gonna have a different mindset where people just assume things, so the effort's not there 100%. Um, so I think that, if Tampa Bay wants to come back, they're going to have a big, to do. Like they're going to have to really get in the heads of those Bruins players because they're just, they're in it. And I know you said you don't really care about Boston. I have I would have more respect for the team if they didn't have Marchand on it. let's just
yeah, I
let's
knew
just say
you'd say that.
that.
I knew you would say that.
Yeah, he's one I can't have respect. I mean, I can have respect for Pasta because he's a damn good player, and whatever. He can play dirty. Marchand, to me, I just don't. I don't care what the numbers say. I don't have respect for him as a player, so it's hard to pull for them. Um so I don't know what's going to happen, in the Atlantic Division, but at this point all we really care about is in the Metro Division, who's our number one.
Yeah, let's talk about the Metro. The Capitals, they're looking amazing.
They are.
And I'll let you talk more about this, but 71 points for the Capitals, 49-33, and no,
11.
no,
Yeah.
33, 11, and 5.
Yeah.
And yeah, I was looking at that wrong. So you have Pittsburgh trailing them with 67 points. Then the Islanders, the Capitals had an amazing game against the Islanders.
Yes.
Carolina, 61 points. And then the bottom 4, the Blue Jackets with 60, Philadelphia with 60, the Rangers with 50, and New Jersey with 41.
Right.
First thing I want to talk about with the Capitals, obviously, the goalie situation. It's been going in since the beginning of the season, how Ilya Samsonov is going to end up being the starting goalie, and Braden Holtby will probably get traded away midway through the season or something. And if that's the case, Braden Holtby has had a great run with the Capitals. I will surely miss him, but the Capitals have been producing a lot of starting goalies. You see Grubauer over there in Colorado. It's like every time you look, a Capitals goalie is starting, in my opinion.
True. But I don't know. I'm probably in a minimal percentile of people who think it would be an absolute detriment to trade Braden Holtby. One, because I think a lot of the fans, they're just looking at him between the pipes for say 1 or 2 games and basing an entire season off of whether or not he played. Listen, the Capitals are not going to win every game. It's not possible. So sometimes if your goalie is off, that's one thing, but you also have to have a strong D-line. And we were kind of struggling with that for a little bit on having Kempney out and bringing Gudis in, and where was the chemistry going to be? And you have Siegenthaler. So there's a lot going on there, but I feel like Holtby as a player, as a person, is just someone that the team and the city has really embraced as a person and as a leader. He's not a hothead. He's very kind of zen, if you want to say. But I think what I admire about him is his intensity. I think his veteranship is going to be something that only Sammy can benefit from. And I think that there isn't an ego there on, I have to, be number one and you're number two. I don't think that that's the case. I think every single time we hit the All-Star break, halfway through the season, we see Holtz with a negative headspace. And listen, a ton of athletes go through it in every sport, and it's a terrible place to be. Like you just have a block and you just can't seem to get over it. And I don't see him as someone who is obsessively looking at social media, but man, we have some really dirty fans out there that can be total jerks. And, if I opened up social media and was reading everyone's comments about trading him and he should go to Seattle, that would get in my head too. So I think we need to go back to remembering, how about the save, from the Stanley Cup. It's like there are things about Braden Holtby that we need to not forget about. And I don't think that trading him is the solution. I think if anything, he's going to be a fantastic mentor for Sammy, who at some point is going to lose a game, not be on this pedestal, because he's fantastic. And if you watch the kid, well, it's not a kid, but he's a kid because I'm old. But he is so fast, so focused, so intense that you just admire, him between the pipes. But I wouldn't, I'm not going to count Holtby out this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't either, but in my thoughts, if he was to get traded, I feel like Ilya Samsonov is good enough to take over the starting goalie position. But once again, I love Holtby. I have all the respect for him after the save he made. That was in the Stanley Cup. That was amazing. But I honestly think Holtby still has a lot of good in him, but it's just going to have to come down to the Caps and their cap situation if they have money to keep Braden Holtby. And what I have been seeing, I'm not sure if that's going to happen.
That's true. That's true. It's actually, we talked about this on Power Play on Sunday, and we had a caller come in from Scotland, which is so awesome. His name is Grant.
Wow.
And he had a really good point, because he said that, Braden Holtby as a person and just kind of who we think we know, his persona as, what we've seen in the pride parades and, how he is with charities he does and he, and he's kind of out of the limelight and all that kind of stuff. He wouldn't be a player that is going to hold out for some ridiculous contract. He may even be a player that is going to say, hey, listen, I want to stay in DC. I've got a family here. I've been here, and would take the pay cut.
Yeah, I wouldn't be opposed to him taking a pay cut. I don't see Holtby as the kind of goalie who would hold out to get more money. I feel like he's a great goalie, and whatever he does, I wish him all the best if he does move on. But in the back of my mind, I hope he stays.
Yeah. Oh, I know. And of course you've got a hot goalie at Hershey, and and Sammy's proving, he's just jumped in and the chemistry is fantastic. And I think, what's so hard to see is that it seems like sometimes the players, social media often kind of chirp in and will say that the players look better when Sammy's in the net. I don't think that's the case. I think there's a couple of games that people are forgetting about, that, that San Jose Sharks game for one. And I know you wanted to talk about that later on, but
absolutely.
We'll
that San Jose Sharks game was incredible.
It was, I think one of, and I am embarrassed to say that I was the person who was so done in minute 59. I was like, that's it. I can't believe we're going to lose this freaking game. And it's like, San Jose is like my home team, hockey team. And so fed up with Evander Kane and everything. And then as I'm going upstairs, my phone is blowing up and I was like, oh my God, no way. And turn it back on. It's like, you've got to be kidding me. So that's just, one of the many fantastic comebacks with the Capitals recently.
Yeah, and another comeback was against the Islanders. That
Yes.
I think that was around New Year's. That was another big game as well.
Right. And then the one that they just played the other day, just a couple days ago, and against the Islanders, and it was, Ovi's second hat trick in 3 games. It's like his statistics are sick. It's like I don't. I every time I have to do any kind of research, even having watched the game, I'm still kind of blown away with how fantastic number 8 is, just as a hockey player, not just as a Capital, but just, thank God, he's like a machine. Yes, no pun intended, but just he's a beast, and he is just I love watching him.
Yeah. So moving right along, Nicholas Backstrom finally gets a contract extension to stay in Washington to maybe for the rest of his career. 5 years is a long time. I think he's locked up for the rest of his career. Give me your thoughts on Backstrom and Ovechkin. Will they get a deal done to keep him in DC for the rest of his career?
I think so. I mean, they would be stupid to not work something out with Ovechkin. I think what I admire most about the Ovechkin Backstrom duo is just, they're a faithful, respected duo on the ice that is, leadership for the younger players, but leadership for some of the other veteran players. It's, you don't hear any scandals. Backstrom doesn't drop the gloves. Ovechkin's, and he's just on a hot streak. And I think the two of them being there are so solid. And, they just kind of anchor that team that I wouldn't be surprised if they both have to retire after, in the 5 years, man, that banner raising of their jerseys would be.
And they will get that. I guarantee you they will get that.
Oh yeah. So I don't see
of Backstrom and Ovi. They will get that for sure.
Oh yeah. And they're just players again, like, just to be respected. I mean, it's I grew up an athlete, and so it's like I know, you kind of get like, oh, this person's so great and whatever. But there just is, regardless if they're on your team, like, these are just two absolute NHL players that should be respected by everyone for just their statistics alone. And, and I really wish one of these years we'd see Backstrom on that All-Star list, because I don't know how that keeps happening. He keeps getting left off.
Yeah, I mean, that would have been nice, but TJ Oshie got the nod this year, if I'm correct.
He did. Well, it was what they call like that last last chance vote, and well deserved. I mean,
very well deserved.
It's crazy. And I think I'm not surprised with Ovechkin passing. He has every right to. I think he's in Mexico right now with Tom Wilson and the families, and you know what? Well deserved. Well deserved, because he's not one I'm ever concerned about that, he's going to go to Mexico and we're going to be like, oh, look at him boozing it up and having going out of control. No, let his body rest. Let him be with his son and his wife and his family. He doesn't need the all-star stuff. He's too far into his career to need that. Carlson, second year in a row, hands down, well deserved. Holy shit, is he on fire? I do have to say, I do wish Holtby would have passed on this one, because I think he needed the rest. But then part of me feels like maybe he needed it to gain his confidence back and kind of be, go into a situation where there's not so much pressure in the All-Star games. And, there are skill competitions, but it's not as intense, say, as, when he's coming back and having so many comparisons with a rookie goaltender.
Yeah, indeed, I totally agree with that. And last point here, Anna. What were your thoughts on Alexander Ovechkin and his 2 hat tricks in a row? That was
Uh,
ridiculous. That was nuts.
it was, and in 3 games. I again, I think I've written down, every time I talk about an Ovechkin, about just that the leadership and the drive and the determination that he has must be just infectious to the other players. It's like you have to look at somebody who gets, slashed in the face, it's a bloody lip, there's no penalty call. And he comes back and just kicks ass with score. Who scores back to back hat tricks? What's so great about him is it's just he does it for the team. He has minimal celebration. And it's just, 100% all about his team. And you just can't help but admire that. But yeah, I will say my jaw dropped thinking, oh God, I wish I was at one or both of those games, because that's history in the making right there.
Absolutely, absolutely, indeed. So moving on to the Western Conference,
Yes.
the defending Stanley Cup champions, St. Louis Blues, are on top of that division in the Central with 68 points. You have Colorado number 2 with 62 points, Dallas with 58 points, rounding out the bottom 4, Winnipeg with 54, Chicago with 54, Nashville with 51, and Minnesota with 50. Any thoughts on the Central Division with the defending Stanley Cup champion Blues?
Oh, you know what? It's always interesting. Um I never yes, and I know the Blues, I guess the Stanley Cup, and I just don't see them being repeat um contenders. I don't know, but I have this like weird feeling about the Avalanche this year. I kind of feel like we're really gonna see something in the second half of the season that's just gonna be like, huh, okay, that's a team to look out for. I always feel that way about the Stars, but I'm not really seeing it so much this season. And I, kind of can't go through the Western Conference without acknowledging Patrick Kane. He hit his 1,000 point. Um, he hit that, that 1,000 point club like 2 nights ago. And for the Blackhawks, he's a hell of a player. So 1,000, that's insane. Again, that's an incredible number, and should definitely be acknowledged. But I don't know. I'm kind of thinking the Avalanche is a team to not take your eyes off of.
Yeah, absolutely. And the Pacific Division, I want to get into this a little bit.
Yep.
Vancouver leading 58 points. Edmonton in second, 57. Calgary with 57. Arizona with 57. Rounding out the bottom 4, the Vegas Golden Knights with 57. San Jose with 56. Excuse me, 46.
46.
Anaheim
Yep.
with 43. In Los Angeles with 41. In the Las Vegas Golden Knights, I was surprised to hear this news. They fired their head coach, Gerard Gallant. Yeah, as you know, the Capitals did beat the Golden Knights in their first year in the Stanley Cup. It was very, very shocking to hear this. What were your thoughts on that firing?
Well, I agree with you. I kind of, I have on my Twitter feed, I get all these kind of like sports updates and whatever. And when that came through, I thought, wait, what? Why would they, of all coaches, that he's pretty respected across, the NHL. So, okay. So I kind of like looked into it a little bit more. And I will say that one of the articles I read, I 100% agree with the journalist, that it was a knee-jerk reaction. There was really no reason for it. I mean, it's not like, this is only the second season for the Golden Knights. I think, we got to think about how that, 17, 18, their first year, they came and played the Caps in the Stanley Cup. I mean, that's just unheard of. And you have strong players that I really can't stand, but there's players on that team that are good, whatever. But I didn't see this coming. I mean, they're only 3 points out of first in the Pacific Division. So, and you kind of have to think about, okay, when you're firing a coach, like that was it. And a knee-jerk reaction, it was impulse move. There was really no reason for it. Is it because he's going to be kind of scouted out for to head Seattle? Is that, but then who they brought in, as the Sharks coach that got fired, that was a weird thing, because the Sharks and, pretty like the Sharks Knights, that's a huge rivalry right there. And you can 100% put that blame on Ryan Reeves and Evander Kane for starting that, shit show, more for lack of better words. But you bring that Sharks coach over to the rivalry team to take over the head job, and you get rid of a coach that really didn't do anything wrong. So I'm not sure what happened. I don't know if it was a chemistry issue, but I definitely think it was a knee-jerk reaction.
Yeah, I was shocked, and maybe Seattle in the new expansion team, that would be very, very cool to see. But I was very, very surprised, because the Caps saw them in the Stanley Cup. In and in my opinion, I thought the game was the Golden Knights were playing decent. They're only in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5th place, and they're tied at 57 with 4 teams. So I mean, I didn't see a reason why. I was looking into the stats more and more. I just didn't see a reason why he got fired.
No. And again, it's gonna. I'm always kind of amazed when certain coaches, certain sports are so very quick to say, okay, like, look, you had a terrible football season, so we're done with you. And it's like, it doesn't always come down 100% to the coach. You have to think about the players and what part they have in it. So this tells me, with them only being 3 points out of first, this has to be like a off the ice issue. Who knows, big egos clashing, whatever it is, because he was shocked to be fired, and it definitely came out of nowhere. It wasn't something where you're kind of thinking like, oh, that sophomore year, like they hit a slump, or this happened or that happened. There wasn't anything leading up to it. So I don't know what's going on with Vegas, but I guess we'll see what happens when they start talking about Seattle.
And we may never know what happened to him, but that about wraps up the division, all the standings and everything.
Yes.
So the All-Star game, looking
Yes.
to the All-Star game, is on Saturday. So what are you looking forward to most about the All-Star game?
I will tell you, I actually like the All-Star game. I think it's fun.
3-on-3 action. I think it's really fun.
It is. And it's quicker, and it's not as aggressive, which is okay, because no one wants to go and get injured. But what I mentioned on Power Play the other night was, I think one of the best things that I've kind of walked away and watching it in the past is that I enjoy seeing the skills competition is always my favorite, but I also enjoy seeing players that, you're not huge fans of and think can be total jerks and whatever, and you see a different side of them. And I know in the past we've seen Crosby and Ovechkin, like sitting next to each other on the bench and laughing, and you're like, hey, look, on the ice, when it's the Pens and the Caps and there's a rivalry, they can totally hate each other. But off the ice, it's like two amazing athletes that respect each other. So I like to see that. I'm not sure who I'm looking forward to seeing this year so much, but I will say my favorite is the fastest skate and the accuracy shooting, because I'm just blown away by the skill of the players for those.
I've seen that last year. It's a lot of skill going into hockey.
It's insane. I mean, it truly is insane. And I don't know if you knew that they added a new skill competition this year. Did you hear about this?
No, I did not.
So it kind of sounds a little absurd, but I have to say I'm guilty of saying I kind of love it and I can't wait to watch it. They're calling it the Shooting Stars. And so they are literally taking some of the players up to a 30-foot platform behind the goal, and that they're going to shoot pucks towards targets on the ice.
Like golf.
Yeah. And I thought, but that's just it though, is, when you see that the shooting, the accuracy shooting, and they have to kind of go through the obstacle course, and it's timed, and how crazy that is. I'm not quite sure what they're going to do with this, but I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued to see what kind of shots these players are going to have to take, and why 30 feet.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds sort of like Top Golf, just
Exactly.
but
Exactly.
with a hockey
Obstacles.
stick and a hockey puck.
Yeah. So it's like, oh, well, this should be kind of interesting. If anything, it's going to be amusing because, maybe nobody will get any of the targets. But I'm anxious to see, like, who they're going to pick for that. And I'd love to see John Carlson get that hardest shot again. Because last year, I think it's 103 miles an hour or 104. I mean, that would like break your leg if it hit you.
Oh, man.
And he's just, he's one of ours. So how can you not pull for him again?
Absolutely. And in conclusion, Anna, what's your thought on the rule that if you skip the All-Star game like Alex Ovechkin is doing for the second straight year in a row, you get a 1-game suspension? Do you think that's really fair in this day of age?
I don't, to be honest. I don't, because I feel like, you make the All-Star team because of your stats and your season, and, well deserved if you look at just the names alone. Just aside from who, we have, your McKinnon and your O'Reillys and your Sagans and Pasta, and, there's so many players out there that have earned this, but I don't think it needs to be part of their contract, so I think it's, if you want to go and have this time in St. Louis, and last year it was in San Jose, it should be optional, and for Ovechkin to say, no, I'm not going to do it, it opens up a spot for somebody else. Great. There's I don't see what the point of the suspension is. Is I'm just, it's kind of lost on me on that one, to be honest. So is it frustrating that he's because I think he actually opted to sit out the Montreal game on Monday when they come back from their break.
Yeah, I mean, what are you playing for in an All-Star game?
Exactly.
I mean, it makes absolutely no sense. It's
It's
like the
especially
MLB All-Star game where they took out the element of who gets home field advantage in the World Series, because they threw that element out the door like 2 years ago, I want to say. So
right.
it's a lot more relaxed in the MLB All-Star game since that. What are they playing for? I don't get it, and I don't get why they have to have a 1-game suspension due to not playing. Like,
Right.
yeah, I mean, your health, you could be sitting out just to recover. That's probably what Ovechkin's doing, but who knows? And I feel like that rule should just be abolished.
I agree. 100% agree with you. I feel like the All-Stars, I think it's mainly for, say, the fans to see an incredible amount of talent all under, one dome in an arena. Okay. But it's also the All-Stars, so they're not really playing, they're doing accuracy shots and things like that. So I feel like it's sort of catering to more of the rookie players. That would be exciting to make it into the NHL and then be like, hey, you know what? You made the All-Star team. Keep it going. But for the vets, it's like, I'd rather have a week in the Bahamas with my family than, go and see, how fast I can shoot a puck into a net. It's just, it kind of wears off. And so I don't think it needs to be, punished by a 1-game penalty. I don't get that either.
At least they're lenient about it, and they just tell them choose what game you want to sit out.
True. but still,
They
it's
make
like,
it as unharsh as possible, but they still give you a 1-game suspension.
yep.
Yeah. So the All-Star game is on Saturday. I'm sure you're looking forward to it along with me, Anna. Great hockey talk, and I'm sure we will get you back on for the second half going into the playoffs.
Definitely. Well, I appreciate you reaching out anytime. Just let me know. Like I said, I've got Power Play on Sunday nights and Sports on the Hill on Monday nights, but usually anytime I have a chance to gush over the Capitals, I will. And thanks for that little 30-second bit on the Niners.
Oh, most definitely. You have a lot of podcasts going. So once again, you can check Anna out on the Power Play Point podcast and Sports on the Hill podcast. Sports on the Hill, they're doing great things over there. I enjoy listening each and every Monday night. If you haven't already, make sure you check them out. You can find them on Facebook, Sports on the Hill podcast. You can also find Anna's podcast on Facebook, I believe, the Power Play Point podcast.
Yes.
So Anna, thanks so much for taking the time to call in. That wraps up our NHL segment for you all, and we will be wrapping up the show when we return. You're listening to the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast.
The Josh Kirby on Sports podcast, part of the Mayo Please podcast network, is sponsored by Route 11 Chips. Make sure you grab a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. And our new sponsor and fellow sports fans at PM Plus Reserves, providing reserve studies for homeowner and condominium associations in the Washington metropolitan area for the past 30 years. Make sure you check us out on all streaming platforms via the Mayo Please and the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. You can also find the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram, along with the Mayo Please on Twitter. Have any questions for the show? Feel free to shoot us an email at kirbyonsports@gmail.com.
All right, we're back. Want to wrap up the show by thanking Dan for calling in and Anna for talking NHL with us. I urge you all to tune in next week to our Super Bowl special. It's going to be a fun one. We're going to recap everything Super Bowl related. We have to have one show for it. It's going to be great. It will be next week sometime, but you will enjoy it. We have a great show planned for the Super Bowl, but until then, that is all the time we have for this edition of the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast. As always, we are part of the Mayo Please podcast network, sponsored by PM Plus Reserves and Route 11 Chips. Make sure you find a bag today inside your local Martin's, Food Lion, and Giant stores. Big thanks to MPT Now Productions, JR Beats Official, and Dave Johnson. You can catch the Josh Kirby on Sports podcast on all streaming platforms and all social media platforms. And you can catch the Mayo Please on all streaming platforms and Twitter and Instagram. Till the next episode, we say so long and peace out.